I know some of you were in the class, some of you weren't. I'll repeat a little bit. Today's class, I'll say in the end, we'll learn why it's called, I'll try to keep my glasses on, a sword in the Beit Hamikdash. So we know that we had, oh, and I'm tired, it hurts my eyes. There was a man by the name Elimelech, married Naomi. They had two sons. They left Bethlehem, they left Israel. It was a famine in the land. And they went to Moab because he was a judge. He was a very wealthy man, but he couldn't stand that everybody was asking him for help. So he decided to leave, and he wasn't there to help the people. And tragedy strikes, and Elimelech dies. The two sons, Machlon and Kilion, married two Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. They converted and they married them. And they didn't have any children. 10 years later, the two boys die as well. As I was saying, I just remembered when I was saying that we are, that he didn't feel like supporting the people, and he didn't feel like, giving tzedakah because they were all the time coming asking for food. I wanted to thank some of the people here, and I didn't see all the names. I know that Eugenia did. We have now for a few days, we're going to have we're having a fundraiser to try to finish the playground. We had raised a lot, but not enough. We want to raise another 102,000. So that's a lot, I know. And I think before the class, if I look, we raised already 1,800. It's 1%, but it's amazing. So if you remember after the class, perhaps you got the email today, you'll look from Chabad House about the playground. Whatever you give, whoever you can tell, it's every little bit counts. So that would be nice because it's something for all of our children to enjoy, to continue, to grandkids, the community, and so on. As you know, the community park is open, obviously, to the Jewish community and to the non-Jewish community as well. So whatever you can support, that'll be great. So we can finish up because they started, but they said they'll finish when we pay them everything. So we do want to finish it. We don't want to halt it in the middle. We need it for camp. We need it for our kids. So God willing, whoever can do it, will do it after tomorrow, whenever you can. Now Naomi's left with the girls. Orpah leaves. Remember, both of them didn't want to leave. Orpah leaves. Ruth doesn't. Ruth stays with Naomi. They come to Israel. Everybody's looking at Naomi and saying, what happened to this woman? She was so
rich.
She was so influential, was this big aristocrat woman, and look how she is, they didn't even have shoes to walk in. Anyway, Naomi sends her, I'm making it very quick just to put it all together. Naomi doesn't tell her they want to go, they need food, and Ruth tells her mother-in-law, I don't want you to go to beg for food. They didn't want to go to jail. I don't want you to go and collect from the fields, as we learned that it was a special mitzvah in the Torah, that in order for the poor people, for orphans, God forbid, for widows, God forbid, not to be embarrassed, humiliated, they can go when the Jewish people would harvest the field. By law, you had to leave some so the poor people can take. They don't have to beg. They don't have to ask you. They can just take themselves. So Ruth said, even though Ruth was a princess, she always lived in a very lavish home and didn't have to work, didn't have to do nothing. And here she's going to beg and going to collect. And she told her mother-in-law, I don't want you to go. I'll go because it'll be an embarrassment for you. Nobody knows me. People know you. And I'll go and I'll help you. That was a very big mitzvah that she had done. She had a lot of kindness, amazing kindness that a lot of people don't have. And what we had learned last week is that and now we're going to go slower, when Ruth came home, she brought food, and Naomi told her, who gave you food? You went to collect stalks of wheat. How do you have? And she told her, I met this man, Boaz, was his field. She told her the whole story. And Naomi says, Boaz is one of our families. And you remember what Naomi said to Ruth to do. Now we're going to go slower. Naomi told Ruth, I'm just repeating from last week, whatever wasn't there, just to remember. She told her to do something very risky. very, very risky. And we were discussing that ordinary people don't take many risks. They're afraid what's going to be. So they go a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, but they try to stay in the middle road. But great people take risks. They have big shoulders, they take risks, but they don't just take, they don't do silly risks. They take risks because they can see what can happen, but then taking a risk, the goodness that can come out. So they take the risk that if God forbid, it will not be fulfilled, they'll have to suffer the consequences, but the benefits can be so high. And here, what is she telling her to do? She's telling her that basically, because Boaz is part of our family and your husband died and our land, our field should not be lost, we need somebody of the family to redeem it. Boaz is part of the family. Then we also discussed that there is a mitzvah in the Torah that is called Yibum. Yibum is a mitzvah that if God forbid somebody dies childless, a man is married to a woman, he dies childless. If he has a brother who is not married, that brother has a mitzvah to marry the widow. Obviously, if both of them want. If the widow says no, she doesn't want this man to marry her and he doesn't want to marry her, then there is a whole thing with the shuch, chalitza it's called, and then they go through that procedure, and then she can marry whoever she wants. Usually in the Torah, a woman is not allowed to marry her brother-in-law. A man cannot marry his brother's wife. Only in here it's a mitzvah if his brother died, God forbid, without having any children. So if a man dies without having any children, the Torah says, this is a very Kabbalistic explanation, part of his soul is still in the widow, is still in this woman. And how can she get it out of her is if she marries his brother or somebody in the family, and she has a child, then that part of the neshama goes out from her and goes into the child. It's reincarnates itself in the child, and you call the child in the name of the father, and so then the father's name is not forgotten. It's a mitzvah to do. Nowadays, if God forbid such a tragedy happens, we always do chalitza. We always do that whole procedure with the shoe, because our generations are so low, and the Chachamim are saying, the chasers are saying that they don't think there is a man that's going to marry a woman, God forbid, if that happened to her, if her husband died without children, for the sake of building his brother's name. They're going to be other alternative motives. And that's why, like, it's not being practiced, because really a man cannot marry his brother's wife. It's something that is forbidden only if you do the mitzvah of Yibum. I'm sure you have many questions on that, but I'm explaining at least in a little bit. So here Naomi is telling Ruth, your husband died. Boaz is part of our family. It's his mitzvah to redeem our fields, our territory, but not just the physical territory, but to build a name to your husband, to Naomi's son, Machlon. So she said, it will be amazing, it will be important that he should do the mitzvah with you because you are the widow and he should marry you. And we were still trying to understand, we still didn't answer it, why she told her to do something in such a different way. What did she tell her to do? She said, you should bathe, you should put cream, you should dress well, look pretty, and go to the field quietly, so nobody notices you. And you will see from far that Boaz, the man who was a big, great sage and a wealthy man and so on, and we know that his wife passed away a few months before, right? He was already an elderly man. He is going to be doing some things with his sheaves, with the wheat, and then when he'll finish, he'll eat, he'll drink, he'll go to sleep. See where he's going to go to sleep. And then in the middle of the night, come close to him, lay down next to him, and uncover his feet. Remember we spoke that, I'll explain again why she told him uncover his feet. And Ruth listened. The only thing that she did differently is that she dressed well only after she left the city because she didn't want people to notice. Now, Ruth took a very big risk with that because Boaz could have get very scared and very upset, and we didn't know that's what happened. Ruth waited in the middle of the night. She came close and she laid next to him and she uncovered his feet. And it says that Boaz woke up and he started screaming. He said, what happened? All of a sudden, he sees a woman laying next to him. He didn't know who it was, who she was. And he said, who are you? And what are you doing here? And so on. And then Ruth did not lose herself. She saw that Boaz got very scared. And thank God that Boaz did not lose himself, because he could have cursed her. He could have get upset. He could have screamed and said, get out of here. What are you doing? And what kind of a conduct is that? You know, he was a great rabbi, a great sage. She's coming, laying next to him. Like, what is this all about? And Ruth was very calm. And in her beautiful aristocrat manner, she said, I'm Ruth, your maid. And you are the man that can redeem me. And she told him, you know, I mean, you realize who she was. He already knew who she was. And she told him, I want you to put lifros, you know, to cover me with your presence, you know, like she spoke to him in a nice way. Basically, marry me. When we go back, remember when Potiphar, the wife of Potiphar, it was in the book of Genesis in Egypt when Joseph was sold as a slave to Egypt. And then he was working in Potiphar's home, and Potiphar's wife really loved Joseph. She got in love with Joseph. Joseph was a young guy, 17, 18 years old, 19 years old at the time, but he was very handsome, and she wanted him to sleep with her. And obviously he said, no, you are a married woman. I cannot do that. And she kept on telling him over and over and over. And she didn't say, you know, protect me, put your thing over me, you know, your dress, your coat, your protect, you know. Ruth said it in a nice way. She said, "Shichvi me, lay with me." No, she said it in the wrong way, and obviously it was wrong. And then, as we know, when he came home, she grabbed him by the coat, right? She grabbed Yosef by the coat, and Yosef started screaming. He wanted to run away, so she got scared that people realized. So she held, and then his sweater, his coat stayed by her, and then she blamed him that he tried to rape her, and it was obviously the other way around. And then he was put in jail, and then the whole thing came with power and so on. But I just wanted to bring to you the difference, how Ruth behaved, how she spoke, how much we have to learn. Even when we say certain things, how to do, and certain things might be maybe not, can be something that is not, how should I say, modest or something like that, but there is a way how to say it. When I tell my children to go to the bathroom when they're little, to go number 2, we always say it in a nice way, not some words that people use or whatever, because you teach children, yeah, that's okay. It's okay to go to the washroom. You have to go to the washroom, but use nice words. Don't use curse words. Oh, did you do this? Obviously, I don't want to take out from my mouth, from my lips, words like that. And our children learn. If we don't use swear words when we get upset, and if we do because we're so used to it, we say sorry, we close our mouth, we say, I'm sorry, sweetheart, I said it, I shouldn't be saying it, I'm just so used to it. Then the child learns that there's certain things you have to say in a nice way. Then our children learn how they have to control themselves if they get angry, how they have to speak nicely. Everything is by role model. If we speak like that, why do we want our children? You know, the known saying, the kids scream, stop yelling. Well, you're yelling. If you don't want your child to yell, tell your child, honey, why are you yelling? Then the child will right away relax. But if you are yelling at them, what they are learning is that when you are older, because you're older and stronger, you're allowed to yell. So they're going to be big, they're going to yell as well. They are not yelling because they're afraid of you. But that's not the right way. You just have to teach them. So here we want to understand what's going on. Boaz listened to what Ruth said, And Boaz said, he obviously did not touch her. They did not have any relationship, nothing. He said, I hear you. You're right. Somebody has to marry you from the family and has to redeem you and your property. But there is somebody who is even closer. Zoechka, if you don't mind to put yourself on mute, then we don't hear any noise in the background. Thank you so much. There is somebody who is even more closer to you, thank you, Zoya, closer to you in family than me. How? Remember, there were 4 brothers, Elimelech, Solomon, Tov, and Naomi's father. So Elimelech married Naomi. So Elimelech's brother, he had a daughter, Naomi. So basically Elimelech married his niece. Boaz was a son from Solomon. He was a son, he was Naomi's cousin. They were first cousin. He was also, Naomi was his aunt because she married his uncle, right? Because Elimelech and Solomon. So anyway, Boaz was a cousin of Naomi and a nephew to Naomi. And now, why somebody else was closer? Because Elimelech was the one who died. And he had sons. Elimelech's brother, who was still alive, he was closer to Ruth than Boaz, because Boaz is a generation lower. Boaz was a child. He was a nephew of Elimelech. So he said, there's somebody who is alive that is closer to you, to redeem you, to marry you than me, to do the mitzvah of Yibum. And I'm going to go and I'm going to speak to him. So now what is he doing? He's going to the city. And he is, the one that was still alive, his name was Tov. He's going to the city, he's going to the gate of the city. Why is he going to the gate of the city? Because usually in the Shar Ha'ir, the way it was in those times, that in the gate of the city, it was like, I guess, like City Hall, there were the judges, the elders of the community were there. So he was there, he was sitting there, and he gathered, and he wanted to gather 10 men, 10 people. So that will be in a minute. What did he do? He was sitting at the gate of the city because he wanted to know what to do. And then as he's sitting there, he sees, it says, Ploni Almoni, one person is passing by. Who was the person that passed by? Boaz was going to look for him. That was his uncle, Tov. That was the uncle that he wanted to speak to him, that he should marry Ruth. Remember, Ruth was very pretty. She was amazing. She was so beautiful. The Torah explains in so many ways that she was extremely, how should I say, attractive. Boaz wasn't going to marry her for that. Boaz knew that it's a mitzvah, but there is somebody who has a mitzvah over him. So he went to look for him. And the Torah tells us that it was so important that somebody from the tribe of Yehuda should marry Ruth, that it was amazing that, the way everything went, she came and she went to the field of Boaz and Naomi told her what to do and so on. So Hashem says, I want it to happen. So he made this man, this uncle, be there when Boaz came to the city. What do we learn from it? Many times we want to do something, we try to do something, and we don't know how it's going to happen, what's going to be. We have to do our part. Girls, it's very important to know. We have to do our mission. We have to do our part. And Hashem will do his. Boaz knew that he wants to help Ruth. He wants somebody to redeem her. He needs somebody from his family to redeem her. The one that is closer, that should be better than him, that is close in kin, is Tov. He decided to go look for him. So he made the good deed. He went to look for him. Hashem helped him that at that moment that he was there, this guy came. It would have taken very long to look for him. He came and he met him. And many times we do things. I don't know why yesterday we had to miss the plane. We don't know. I mean, we didn't miss it. It was canceled. So many planes were canceled. Obviously, somebody had to see us. Somebody had to be there. It was very interesting when we were standing in line to rebook. There was a young girl standing there. She said she's going to Florida. I don't know if she was Jewish or not. I mean, we didn't ask her. She could have looked Jewish. And then Menachem was speaking to somebody, speaking about the fundraiser, I think to Rochel or Zalmi or whatever. And he mentioned the word Chabad, I guess. So then she tells him, she says, I think I hear the word Chabad. So we told her, oh, are you Jewish? She goes, oh, yeah, sure I am. And she told us where she's from in Florida. And we know the Chabad rabbi there. And she says, Chabad is everywhere like a family. I'm there already for 10 years. I come, I go. She's a student. She's a young adult there, whatever. It was very nice. We started speaking. Who knows? I don't know if it was to meet her, whatever the reason was. We did the best we can. We left Crown Heights early. Brooklyn. It was not easy. We didn't get to do everything we wanted. I mentioned to some people, I really wanted to go see my father again. Obviously, he came to the engagement party, but I wanted again. I said, no, we've got to come back to Calgary. We cannot come in on Thursday. We have to come on Wednesday. We left early because it was supposed to rain. That's why everything was canceled. So we were afraid to be caught in the rain. We said, we're going to go early, so we're not caught in the rain, so we are not missing the flight. We did everything in our power. But Hashem wanted us to reschedule for today, and we came today. So everything has a reason we don't always see, but we had to try. If we were negligent and just came late and we would miss the flight because we came late, that would be wrong. But we did whatever we were able to do in our power. And that's how we have to do. When we do in our power, what we have to do, Hashem does his part. And so when he saw his uncle, he says, I've got to speak to you. He gathered 10 elders, 10 men that were wise men, knew a lot of Torah, and he wanted now to decide what to do. What was the problem, girls? I think we mentioned before. There is a halacha in the Torah that says, Lo yavo Amoni uMoavi bikal Hashem. Somebody from the nation of Ammon and Moab cannot marry into the Jewish people. They can convert. Ruth converted, Orpah converted, they can convert, but they can marry each other. A man and a lady from those nations, if they convert, they can marry each other, but they cannot marry into the Jewish people. As many nations, as many generations as possible, they cannot allow it. And Egypt, and the Egyptians also says that Egyptians cannot come in to marry Jewish people, only the third generation, which means if some Egyptians convert, they marry each other. After 3 generations of their offsprings, the third generation can marry Jewish people. But Ammon and Moab cannot. Moab, as I told you before, is Jordan of today, and Ammon is a little bit lower. I don't know if Saudi Arabia, but a little bit lower. Those were the 2 nations. Why? Why did the Torah say not to? Because they did not give, when the Jewish people were crossing and coming to Israel, they didn't give them bread and water. They didn't want to give them nothing. They were so cruel. And the commenters explain why. Why do we make such a law that they cannot? Why? Who says they were cruel? Maybe they didn't have money. Maybe they were poor. They had an inflation. They had some kind of a bad business here. They didn't have money. That's why they didn't want to do it. No, that's not the reason. Because a little while later, during that time, the Jewish people want to go into Israel. If you remember the story of Balak, that was the king of Moab, he hired Bilam. He hired Bilam. He told him he'll give him a house full of gold and silver and diamonds, but he hired him to go curse the Jewish people. So they cannot say that they didn't have money. They had money. They were just very evil. They were very cruel. And that's why Hashem said they don't deserve to go to, they can convert if they want, but they don't deserve to marry Jewish people. Other nations, when they want to convert, they don't have to wait. They want to convert. If they convert the right way, they can marry right away somebody Jewish. They don't have to wait any generations. But, well, Egypt, yeah, but Ammon and Moab, nothing helps. Now, here is a problem. They knew that Ruth came from Moab. So what are we doing now? How are we handling it? And that's why Boaz called the people and they were sitting together, and they wanted to discuss the whole thing in the Torah from the sages. What is it exactly? Are we allowed to marry Ruth or not? That's true. She's a convert, she converted, but are we allowed to, is a Jewish man allowed to marry her or not? And they spoke about all of those laws and so on. And basically the Torah does say that lo yavo amoni umoavi. It speaks only about the male, not about the female. Why? What's the difference? Why are the men? So the men didn't give them food, so the ladies could have given them food. No. It says that there wasn't the way for the women to give them food. When a nation is crossing and coming into your land, although they were not a threat, the way it was that the men would go out and ask them, what do you want? They would give them. Why? Because the Torah says, Kol kvuda bat melech pnima, the respect, the honor of a lady, of a woman, of a daughter, of a princess, bat melech, all of us are daughters of Hashem, daughters of a king, we are princesses. Pnima is inward, is to be modest. It's not a way for women, if some nation come, people come, soldiers, well, people come, and women go out to greet them. It's not considered nice, it's not considered modest. It was a job of the men to go and give them the food, the water, and the bread. It was not the fault of the women. It wasn't something that was expected from the women to do. And that's why the women were not rude. They were not cruel. They didn't do anything wrong. The men did. And that's why the decree came only on the men. So Ruth was not a male. She was a female. That's why she was allowed to go in, and they were allowed, she was allowed, a Jewish man was allowed to marry her, but it was still a little bit questionable, and that's why they were discussing it. And here, Boaz is explaining to his uncle, to Tov, the whole thing. He said, you know, Elimelech, your brother, this and this happened. We have to buy the field from them. There are many more explanations. We just don't have time to go into all those details. Naomi had a part of the field that belonged to Elimelech, and Ruth also had a part that belonged to her husband, and so on. And he said, okay, I'm ready to pay. I'm ready to redeem their field, so they should be able to have their part of the land, that their part of the land of their late husbands should not be lost. I'm ready to do that. But Boaz told him, if you're ready to do it for Ruth, it's not like you need to give her money to buy the, to help her to redeem the field, like to Naomi. You have to marry her because you are the closest in kin to be able to, for her, God willing, to get pregnant, have a child, and to build a name for her son, for her husband who passed away. And then Tov said, no. I don't think I can do that. What do you mean? Why did he say before yes and then not? Like, what's going on? He was a great sage too. He was a great man. And he said, I don't know what's going to be with my children. What did he mean to say? He says, if I have the mitzvah to marry her, to redeem her, okay, I'm going to do that. She converted, she's Jewish. I'm going to do that. But then what's going to be with my children? If I'm going to marry her, she might have children from me. And then those kids, they're going to be a problem if they're Jewish or not Jewish, if people will question their identity because of the law that it says you're not allowed Ammoni or Moavi, and it was very new. There was nobody that came yet from the Moabite nation to the Jewish people. Nobody converted. She was the first one. So it was a raw issue, and it wasn't easy for him to decide. So he says, I don't think I can do that. And now let's go to something else. Remember the story? I know it's a lot of things, but that's the nice thing in this class of Ruth. David and Goliath. King David and Goliath, who was a big leader too, was a very cruel man. They were really related because King David was from the descendants of Ruth, and Goliath was from the descendants of Orpah. They both married two brothers. They were both the daughters, the princesses of Eglon, the king of Moab. So they were related, but they were so far, in the way they behaved. Goliath was a cruel man. I just want to remind you, if you ever learned the story in the Novi, Goliath for 40 days and 40 nights was coming out and cursing the Jewish people and threatening them and so on. It was very, very scary. He was a giant, very strong man, and everybody was so scared of him. And here King David was a short man, it was a na'ar, he was a young man then, and everybody was afraid what will happen. And he said, you know what, give me the opportunity to go and fight Goliath. And who was the king then but the Jewish people during that time was Shaul, King Shaul. And when David came out, it says that King Shaul asked Avner, he asked his minister, he told him, who is this Mihanaraze? Who is this child? Who is this young lad? Who is this? And Avner said, I don't know. What do you mean he doesn't know? Didn't they know it was David, the son of Ishai? Like, what do you mean they ask who is it? What they were asking is, who is he? Is he really Jewish? Who is the ancestors? Ruth was his great-grandma. But if somebody converts not according to halacha, then the kids are not Jewish. They can say they're Jewish and the grandkids are not Jewish if it comes from the mother's lineage. So there was like a question, again, kind of erupted, but when he asked him, he says, who is he? Who is his grandfather? I know that his grandmother was Ruth, but who is his grandfather? Peretz or Zerach? Peretz and Zerach were the children of Tamar. And I just want to remind you again, and those of us who didn't hear before, that Ruth was not a new soul. She was reincarnated a few times till she came to this world, and Boaz as well. So Lot, who was the nephew of Abraham, when the stone was destroyed and he ran away, they ran away to the cave, and he ran away there only with his two daughters because his sons-in-law didn't want to come. They didn't believe that Hashem is going to destroy the whole area. So they stayed alone and they said, what's going to be? Our mother died. Our father is going to be old soon. He's going to die. And there's no man in this world for us to marry. They thought the whole world was destroyed like during the flood, because that happened after the flood. So they said, let's live with our father. And basically they made their father drunk and they lived with their father that night, the older one, the younger one. They got pregnant from the father, and that's how they had children. That's how Moab was born. It's not a nice relationship at all. Later on comes another relationship, which was in an interesting way, Yehuda and Tamar. Yehuda was the reincarnated soul, the Gilgul of Lot, and Tamar was from the daughter of Lot that had Moab. What happened there? Again, I'll say quickly. Tamar married Yehuda's oldest son. Yehuda's oldest son died. So the other son, right, had to marry her because his brother died without children. So she married the second son, and the second son died as well. Hashem, it says Hashem wasn't happy with whatever the way they behaved, and he died as well. So Yehuda still had a third son, the younger one. He had to marry Tamar, but Yehuda said, no way. I'm not going to let my younger son marry this woman. This woman kills her husband. So he told her, just sit there and wait. And she was very upset. She didn't know what to do. She knew that she has to have children with the family of Yehuda. And then it was before the giving of the Torah. So it wasn't, the mitzvah wasn't just on the brother-in-law, but it was anybody from the family. So she really could have married her father-in-law. Usually you're not allowed. It's a big no-no. A father-in-law is not allowed to marry his kala, the wife of his son. No way, in no circumstance. But here, It was before the giving of the Torah, and she didn't have kids, so it was allowed. So what did Tamar do? She was a tzaddik, she was a very righteous woman, and she got dressed as a harlot. She knew that Yehuda was coming. Yehuda lost his wife, and anyway, he didn't think it was Tamar, and he lived with her, and she got pregnant, and the whole thing, and she had twins, Peretz and Zerach. So now King Saul asked this boy David, who is his grandfather? If it's Peretz, Peretz is the name, means lifrot, to strength, to go something above. Like when you say lifrots, is also like to break in. God forbid if somebody breaks a bank, or God forbid breaks into something, a criminal, you use the word lifrots. So he says, who is he? If he is from the place that he can bridge, that he has that strength, then he's worthy. Then he'll be able to, win Goliath, and he did win him. So I'm just saying there was, and there was some talk. Sometimes if people wanted to speak against, they said, oh, is he legitimate? Is he so on and so forth? And this is the name of the class, which we will understand next week a little bit more. Why is it called a sword in the Beit Midrash? Beit Midrash means in the house of study. So they were discussing now if David was legit or not, and so on and so forth. And the judge said, for sure she is, because the Torah says, it says very clearly that only the males weren't allowed to join in, but the women were allowed to convert. And that's why Ruth was a full-fledged convert that was allowed to marry right away. And her children are all Jewish. And he says, whoever is saying that King David is not legitimate, is not a Jew, I'm gonna stab them with a sword right away. So the question is, why did the judge say it? He's basically kind of made all the people scared that they should say, for sure, King David is Jewish, for sure, Ruth was a true convert, for sure, the female converts were allowed from Moab, were allowed to enter. Why did he have to threaten them? If he threatens them, then they're not really saying their opinion, they're afraid. We'll discuss it next week. But what else I want to say is here, that I want to explain as well, to say that when Sancheriv, who destroyed the first Beit Hamikdash, we know that we had 12 tribes. We know that 10 tribes were lost. We don't know where they are, because Sancheriv, the king Sancheriv, was a very wicked man. And what did he do? He changed everybody's nation, everybody's place, every nation he took, and he put them in other places. That's why we don't know. He put them in a far place, and they never came back. So when the second Beit HaMikdash was built, the tribe of Levi and Yehuda and half of Benjamin, they came back, but all the other ones didn't. And we don't know where they are. There's a lot of videos and speculations who they are. Some people say it's part of the Chinese people, because the border that it says, we don't know exactly what it means in nowadays, but because Chinese people also are very smart, they like to learn and so on. Some say it went, well, Afghanistanis, like, I don't know, we don't know where they are. They're not, they lost their connection to the Jewish people, so they are not considered Jewish anymore, because they did not continue the Torah. We don't know who they are. It's already over 2,000 years. And he did the same for those two nations of Ammon and Moab. So now there are not people that we can say, now if somebody is coming and they want to convert, we don't tell them to wait, because we don't know who they are. They got all, mixed with all the other nations. So they are not pure. It's not the pure Moab anymore. It's not the pure Egypt anymore. It's all different nations. So now, as we know, somebody who's coming to convert, we convert them if they really want to halacha, and they are allowed to marry any Jewish man or any Jewish woman who they want. They don't have to wait any time. It was only then, during that period of time. So here now we know that Ruth took that big risk. Boaz told her that there's this other man that can, somebody who's closer, that should marry her. He doesn't want to marry her, and we're gonna learn next week what happens, why Boaz, how does it go, how Boaz, I guess, does decide. We do know that they were married. We'll learn how it happened and so on and so forth. And hopefully we'll also be able to learn why King David, the dynasty of Moshiach, came from such, in the beginning for sure was immoral relationships, and everything came in such an interesting way. Why didn't Naomi tell Ruth, or Naomi, she knew Boaz, he was her nephew. She could have met up with him and say, you know what happened. We know the mitzvah of Yibum. Ruth is young. She can still have children. Her husband died. You're in our family. You should marry her. Speak in a nice way. You do a shidduch, right? I did now shidduch for my son. You don't go around in an ugly way. Like, why did she tell her to go at night and lay next to him and open his feet and so on and so forth? And when we did to open his feet, I want to mention again, those of us who didn't hear, it was very interesting, because when a woman doesn't want to marry a brother-in-law in order to build a name for her husband who died, or a brother who doesn't want to marry the widow of his wife in order to build a name for his brother, there is a whole ceremony that is called chalitza, and it's going with a shoe. Why with a shoe? Because a shoe is a sign of protection. When we want to walk outside, we don't want to walk on insects. We don't want to walk on, on mud, on thorns, on stones, right? We wear shoes to protect our foot. The same thing, that mitzvah, somebody who doesn't want to protect the widow of his brother, then he has to take off the shoe and throw it because he's not trying to protect her. And here, Naomi told Ruth, go uncover his feet. Tell him that he has to protect you because it's his mitzvah to marry you in order to redeem the family that died. So we'll continue next week. I know it's extremely interesting and we'll see what happens. To me anyway, it's extremely interesting. It's a lot of history and we'll learn from it a lot. One of the lessons we'll learn today, that whatever we say, we should say in a nice way, use nice words. The same way, whatever we say, it's like people that would say, oh, you are going to be intimate with your husband. There's many other words that people can use, the three-letter words, S, E, whatever, X, you know what I mean? And this, we don't have to use those words. Use clean words. Use words like intimacy, to be intimate. You don't have to say words that people use that it's not bad words, but it's used in a lower class people, if I may, in a derogatory form. And when we do that, it's so important we make ourselves feel better. We behave like princesses, like daughters of a king, and everybody around us, especially our children, learn how to speak, how to be nice. And the other thing also we learned today from the many things, that when we have to do something, we should do it. Even though we don't know how it's going to happen, we have to do our part. Hashem will help. Like Boaz, he wanted to meet his uncle. He went to the city. He didn't know how he was going to meet him. And as he sits down, his uncle comes. Hashem made his uncle want to come. Many times when we try and we really don't know how it's going to happen. How will I do that? I want to give this tzedakah. I want to do this. I don't think I have enough. How will I accomplish? You try and you try. And sometimes it's harder. It's a little bit challenging, but then Hashem will help, because our work is to try and to do. Not always we have results, because we don't know what the results are. Sometimes we just have to try. The challenge is just to try, not to have any results. The result is that we try the effort, like you tell your children, I'm going to finish, you tell children study, Mommy, but I'm not going to get 100 on my math test anyway. That's okay. As long as you tried, because maybe you try so many times, and then next year when you're going to be in grade 9 or grade 10, it's finally going to enter and you're going to know it.
Again.
Thank you so much. Have a good Shabbos, girls. If somebody has any questions, we have a few minutes. Shabbat Shalom. If you want to leave, you can leave. And take care and all the best. And those of you who want to come in person, now on Shabbos, we have Feminine Conversation in person as well. And that'll be very nice. Cheryl and Dorit, good Shabbos, and Eugenia and Adina. Who else is here with us? Loredana.
Shabbos.
Jeanette,
Good Shabbos,
Rosie,
everyone.
Julia, and Linda. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
It's so
Shalom.
nice. I hope those of us who just joined us today still were able to understand a little bit what's going on. And I guess next week, hopefully, we'll see if we can try to finish to understand what happened and what are the explanation why it had to happen that way, whatever we can understand. And then we'll go to other subjects. Take care. Shabbat shalom and all
Shabbat
that.
shalom. Thank you very
Shabbat
much.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat
Bye-bye.
shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
girls. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. So good to see you. Linda, are you going in then out of town or you don't know yet?
Yes. We are going. They open up the flights.
Very good. So we're not going to have your little guys this year.
Yeah, no,
No.
I forgot to message.
So if you don't mind, message Mushka.
Yeah, I'm gonna message her.
Very good. Enjoy your parents, the best.
Thank you. Oh
Very
yeah.
good for you. Take care. Nothing like family.
Thank you.
All the best.
100%.
Shabbat shalom, girls. Thank you so
Shabbat
much.
shalom.
Shalom.
Bye.
Take care. We'll see you.